Good morning. Oh, you can do a little better than that. Good morning. Oh, there you go. That's what we're looking for. My name is Reverend Lennox Yearwood. I'm a national climate change and climate justice leader. And just for the record, I'm here on my own time. And I obviously want to be here, which is even more important. It is amazing to stand here at the crossroads of history. For me, as a person of color, as an African American, standing here now in Virginia is very important. 400 years ago, in 1619, the first enslaved Africans came right here to these shores. And it's amazing for me to now reflect that I am now, as a descendant of those people, standing here now. That also shows how amazing our country is. It's one of the reasons why I signed up to be an officer in the Air Force and was actually stationed not too far from here at Bolling Air Force Base and Andrews Air Force Base. But it's also the reason why me being from Louisiana, and next year actually marking 15 years from Hurricane Katrina, is why I now stand here now. It is because of the climate crisis and the issue regarding climate change. And because of that, one of the things that I saw 14 and a half years ago in New Orleans on August 29th, 2005, was almost 1,900 citizens lost their life. And in that process, one of the things that now breaks my heart is that from that time, we have not done all the things we can do to take on the issue of both climate change and pollution. But that's why we're here today, because it isn't the fact we don't have the things in place to take on the climate crisis. The only thing now in the way is policy. So let me also say to all those who have been fighting in the streets and the activists, thank you for what you have been doing. Your demonstration has been seen and heard. But we also know that demonstration without legislation leads to frustration. And so that's why we have to shape policy. And that's why we're standing here. Mayor Mike would say that the only thing that's stopping this crisis is policy, which is one of the reasons why he stepped to the plate. And in that process, what we've seen and what we need now is now also continuity of effort. Because one of the things we see, we have this fossil fuel industry, particularly the coal industry, that would not go, would not transition. And there are folks like Mike and many of the amazing organizations who stood up and say, no, we must end coal. We must get beyond coal and move things forward. Because we understand that if we rely upon it, it causes asthma and emphysema and cancer. Do you know that folks who live within 1 mile, just 1 mile of a coal ash site, literally 1 in 50 get cancer? There are children who are literally suffering because of asthma and emphysema. That is not the country that I signed up as an officer to defend. The country is a country that fights for all of us: black, white, brown, red, yellow, male, female, straight, gay, theists, atheists, Americans. That is the country that takes on the climate crisis and moves things forward. That is what we have to be and what we must be now. This is not about Republican or Democrat. This is about what we need to be as Americans and what we need to do in the world. So let me conclude with this. 100 years from now, 2119, 500 years from when those first enslaved people came to this country, none of us in this room will be here. But what will be here will be the work that we put forth for the next generation. That will be here. That's what's so important. 2119, they won't ask. They will say if we have clean water or clean air, it will be because of those people who lived in 2019 and 2020. That will be the day and the time they will look back upon us and say, were they courageous enough? Were they courageous enough to transition, to fight for us now. The same way that I can say I'm so glad that there were folks who were courageous enough to stand up against slavery so I could stand here right now. Let us be that America. Let us be that country so that the next generation will simply say, thank you. I want to introduce now Patricia Suba, who has been an amazing environmental advocate. She'll tell you who she is and her work. It's in the great state of Missouri, the Show Me State, from St. Louis. I was blessed to work with her on many occasions when I went to Ferguson, and it's great to see her now as we create an America that fights for the next generation. Thank you. Yes.
And thank you, Reverend Yearwood, and good morning to everyone. I'm so glad to be with you to talk about these issues that are pressing in communities in the Midwest and across this nation. And Reverend Yearwood, we are courageous enough. We are the group that will fight and move us beyond carbon, beyond coal, and actually to create the type of America that we can be. And that's one where everyone has a shot and everyone is protected. Despite the rain today, we're all here today, so that says how committed we are to making this change happen and supporting someone who can make our dreams come true. I live in a small town called Labadie, Missouri. It is west of St. Louis, Missouri, along the Great Missouri River. Unfortunately, it's also home to the largest unscrubbed power plant in the nation. This plant is damaging the health of my family and neighbors, and it's damaging the health of our planet, polluting the air we breathe and the water we drink. Unbelievably, that plant alone causes the death of almost 290 people per year, every year. And it was built in 1970, and they're planning on continuing to operate that plant till 2038. That's almost unbelievable. Friends and family in my community have paid the price. I know people who've died of cancer, who have asthma. My mother has a breathing problem that she never should have had because she's never smoked in her life. And this plant continues to fuel the climate crisis, which is equally as horrible. It produces more floods and more temperature swings and ruins crops and threatens our community, our families, our economy, and our collective future. I'm from a farm family. I'm the 5th generation of farmers in Missouri, of immigrants that came to the United States from Germany. And we're now seeing farmers who can't even plant their crops because of floods 2 and possibly 3 times a year since 2015. And certainly over the past 25 years, we've seen major changes in climate in the plants that can grow and then the locations that we can grow that food for the rest of the nation. Because of course we're in the valleys of the 2 largest and most fertile rivers in the nation, the Missouri and Mississippi rivers. They converge in St. Louis and move south. I run an organization called Labadie Environmental Organization. That sounds really impressive. We're all volunteers. This is happening in places across the United States. So a group of us got together and formed a nonprofit, and we've been fighting coal pollution and coal ash for the last 11 years. There is a lot of energy to make these changes happen and to stand behind a candidate who can actually champion our causes. So I've seen the damages firsthand, and I refuse to let it continue to happen. So the fight continues and highlights what we can get done. The good news is that coal plants are closing across the country, and they can't close quick enough for our little communities. There are fewer and fewer plants like the Labadie plant polluting our health and planet, and more cities and organizations taking action, thanks in huge part to someone I'm honored to introduce now. Mike Bloomberg has long been a leader in protecting our environment and improving people's health, and he's done it as mayor of our country's largest city. as the head of a successful business and as a philanthropist, launching initiatives and bringing people together in the United States and around the world. When Mike was mayor of New York, the city's researchers told him that within the next generation, 1 million more people would be living in New York City. He learned that as more people entered the city, pollution would rise and people's health would suffer, and he refused to pass the buck. He and his team put together what was the most comprehensive sustainability plan a city has ever created to clean the air and the water and enhance the city's resilience as it grew. The plan helped cut carbon emissions by nearly twice the national rate, improved air quality, and became a model for cities across the United States. Since leaving office, he's continued to drive strong and measurable and local action on climate, power plant pollution reductions, which is amazing. We need both of those things. We need to reduce the emissions from power plants and close them and take them offline, and never forget the communities that are dealing with that pollution that's buried forever in our communities. He's helping cities like St. Louis, near where I live, and Washington, D.C., near where we stand today, to reduce their emissions from buildings and transportation. And of course, he has been such a strong force in the campaign to retire coal plants, including the one behind, well, not behind me now, where we were going after this presentation. Yes. Communities in the nation's heartland deserve closure and cleanup of dozens of the dirtiest and oldest coal plants still in operation, and the jobs and the new energy economy will provide. To make even more progress in this fight against climate change, we need a strong leadership in the White House. Mr. Bloomberg, Mike, has the track record and the commitment to action to be that leader. I want to thank him for his work, his leadership, and his commitment to this cause. It's my pleasure to introduce to you now Mike Bloomberg.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. That was nice. Well, good morning and thank you, everyone. It is great to be here with this team of volunteers and climate champions. Patricia, thank you for those great words. My mother would have believed every one of them if she were alive. My daughters, not so much. And you should know that Patricia and I, after this is over, are going to work to try to get a coach for Reverend Yearwood to learn how to be enthusiastic. Thank you for your comments as well. Yeah, and your leadership over the years really made a big difference. Bruce Nellis is here. Bruce, where are you? You were, there we are, wave. We were together yesterday, but you were on my other side, as I remember. He is the brains behind the scaling of Beyond Coal, and he really deserves an awful lot of the credit. And we're also joined by Misty O'Quinn, a Sierra Club organizer and mother of 3 from Dallas, who's taking on the dirtiest coal plant left in the United States. Deborah Graham, who is a North Carolina activist. I'm going to be in North Carolina on Sunday. Are you going to be there?
Yes.
I'm going to go to church like I do every Sunday. Well, I did for 12 years, and I will say I actually learned a lot. It's just great to see different cultures and how people pray and people preach, and the messages are actually different from each church, and you do learn a lot. And I've always joked that I never told my mother I spent more time in church than in temple, but she didn't seem to care when we did talk about it. And Dwayne Nanya Min from Minnesota, who's doing great work to pressure rural co-ops to ditch coal. And thank you for all of you. And this is a place we were here. Antha, where are you? How many years ago were we here? 8 years ago. We were in a barge in the middle of the Potomac River. It was steaming hot, as I remember, and evidence of this is really a true story. And we talked about this coal-fired power plant, and the piles of coal on the upriver side were really amazing. And I always thought, Congress, it's one thing for them to not pay any attention, but they were working downwind. How stupid can you be? They were breathing all that air. Well, today, if you walk out and look at the power plant, the coal is all gone, the plant is closed. I assume at some point here it's going to be ripped down and they'll do something much more productive with the land. Well, so far we did something, and we'll continue on that. We are in the shadow of the Capitol, and why? Because our nation's work on climate change began here, and a decade ago, we started a program to get a cap-and-trade bill passed. It was a time when both houses were in the Democratic hands, but the bill lost in the Senate where they couldn't get 60 votes. And it's a shame because a cap-and-trade program then has its problems, but I think it would have been the right thing and it would have made a difference. The fact that we didn't get it done, it's just sad, I guess. But it is also that a lot of people thought it was the end of U.S. leadership on climate change back then, but we refuse to believe that, and I think we've shown that we've done an awful lot since then. In 2011, we came here, as I said before, and we stood in a spot right around here, and we said, we are just not going to walk away. And we called our new campaign Beyond Coal, and nearly a decade later, it's been called the most successful campaign of the modern environmental movement. And thanks to all of you. But it just goes to show you, if you set reasonable objectives and if you include the public and explain what you're trying to do, you really can make progress. And we are better off because of that, but we're certainly nowhere near where we have to be. We launched a campaign to retire 1/3 of the U.S. coal plants by 2020. You'll be happy to know we met that goal 6 years early, and so we raised the goal. Now, a cynic would say poor forecasting, but that's okay. We met our new goal, and we increased it again, and so far we have retired 299 out of 530 coal plants across this country. And we have a commitment to retire all of them by 2030. And I think given what's happening across the country and the public's understanding of the damage that these plants are doing, not just to the long-term climate change, but to the short-term environmental issues, that the water we drink and the air our kids are breathing and that sort of thing, this is not an unreasonable goal. And I'm going to do everything I can, and I hope everybody in this room will help to get them all gone. People say, well, you know, why are you so sure you can do it? And my answer is because we've already done it. In the first 8 years, we're over halfway there. And we accomplished this even with Donald Trump's administration working against us. So if we could have a president that actually wants to lead the way and help, whether they're Democrats or Republicans or whatever, we could do an awful lot more, a lot quicker, and that would save a lot of people's lives and keep them healthier. And that's really why I'm running for president, because I think that Donald Trump is the wrong person for the job. I don't think that he is reuniting and rebuilding America, which is what we needed, what we still need. I said this back in 2016 at the Democratic Convention in Philadelphia. Unfortunately, not enough people listened to me, but at least I'm on record. You can go back, you can get it on YouTube. We have to start working as hard as we can building a 100% clean energy economy because the alternative is just too bad for all of us. Today, I'm happy to announce that we are setting new ambitious goals for our country, including goals that we can actually achieve over the next 8 years. First, I will push for an 80% reduction in electricity emissions by the year 2028 and 100% clean energy, electricity energy shortly thereafter it. And to get it done, we'll replace all U.S. coal plants with clean energy, and we'll also replace existing gas plants, and we will stop the construction of new gas plants. There is an article and I think it's today's New York Times, about the amount of methane that gas is spewing into the air. It is really scary. This is going to be worse than coal. So we've got to make sure that we go from beyond coal to beyond carbon, which is what we've done with our organization. It's a critical step to stopping the worst effects of climate change, because gas, as I said, is now really a very big problem, bigger than coal. We'll also put a moratorium on all new fossil fuel leases on federal lands. That will make a big difference. And we'll send the over $10 billion in subsidies to fossil fuel companies to help them make the transition. But no more tax loopholes, no more tax breaks or egregious tax deductions. We have to all be in this. What's happened is an awful lot of coal-fired power plants just declare bankruptcy. They walk away from their obligations to help the coal miners who have damage to their lungs from breathing all the air. They walk away from their obligation to honor pension contracts. They walk away from their obligation to reclaim the land afterwards and just say, we're bankrupt, sorry. That's what Donald Trump did in his businesses, and we just can't allow that anymore. As president, I will accelerate America's transition to an all-carbon economy. We have as a goal 2050, but quite honestly, we can't wait for 2050. We have to get it done a lot quicker than that. Having said that, you got to start someplace. And my experience in business and in 12 years in City Hall running the most progressive city in the country was, if you set big long-term goals, nothing ever happens. If you set small, achievable goals, you can do them one after another. And it's just amazing when you stop down the road and look back and see the compounding effect of doing lots of small things. It's really quite amazing. You get where you want to go with a lot more degree of assurance and a lot quicker. Long-term goals stop people from passing the buck and kicking the can down the road. We'll focus on getting big things done now and improving health and creating jobs for Americans today. And we will cut greenhouse gases and emissions across the entire United States by 2030. And that is a realistic goal. To get 100% by 2030, probably not going to happen, but we certainly can get halfway there. At the same time, we're going to invest in new technology that can move us forward as fast as humanly possible to the 100% clean energy economy that we want. And things are just getting worse by the day. We just got to stop this. Just think about this. 18 of the last 19 hottest years in recorded history have taken place since 2001. And if you do the math, 19 years, 18 of them in one direction. Maybe that's a trend. Farmers in Canada are growing the same crops that we used to grow in Iowa. I was in Iowa 2-3 months ago, and the farmers I talked to, more than anything else, they were complaining that they had a new competitor up north. Why? Because Canada is today warmer than it used to be. In California, everybody, I'm sure, has seen the newspapers and the television footage of wildfires that are getting more destructive, and the wildfire season in California, I was there yesterday or the day before, days are missed, I think 2 days ago. The wildfire season is 2 months longer than it was a century ago. And in Georgia, sea levels are 18 inches higher than in the 1950s. Think about that, or 11 inches higher. 11 inches is an awful lot. So things are going in the wrong direction, and we've just got to stop it. By 2045 or 2050, or if not before, the consequences of climate change really can be catastrophic. And so we have to set these intermediate goals I talked about. And the truth is, we don't know what technological advancements will occur in the future, but we can accelerate their development. I gave a commencement speech at MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, this last spring. And, you know, MIT is one of the hotbeds of science in the country. It's a great asset for America, and I was very proud of it because I come from Boston, although I did realize I would never have gotten into MIT if I'd applied, so I didn't apply, but I did live 20 minutes away. And the message that I tried to give them was that the problem is not science. We either have the science or we at least know what science to work on, and we will get there. The problem is political. We just have to have the will, and we need leaders to pull us together. I think we have to quadruple our investment in research and development across multiple federal agencies to work with the private sector to unlock more private capital for clean energy investment and work on sustainable development. And we also have to end the war on science that the Trump administration is waging. I believe that all these federal agencies whose mission is to study and protect our environment should be managed by independent scientists. Cannot be a political thing to decide whether or not you do a study of if I let go of this, it falls. The science is there. We know about gravity. You just can't start relitigating and reinvestigating every single thing just to stop any progress or to take us back from where we are today. I believe that these agencies' mission is to study and protect our environment, and I know it's a crazy idea, but when I am president, you can rest assured scientists will be allowed to do their jobs. Yeah. I promise you, I will reverse Trump's dangerous rollbacks of rules that protect clean air and our drinking water and our health and safety. Those roadblocks are exposing millions of Americans to pollutants, and the people who are most at risk actually are low-income Americans in both urban and rural areas because we have put our power plants, unfortunately, in areas where they live. I'll also bring the full resources of federal agencies to bear in setting aggressive health and safety standards. Back when I was mayor, seems like a long time ago, but it wasn't that long ago, I did get a chance to see up close and personal the effects that pollution had on kids and families. And the worst air pollution in New York City and in cities across the country was in Black and Latino neighborhoods. And those kids in those neighborhoods were much more likely to develop asthma than other children. It's one thing, there's no question about what happened. You'll see who goes to the hospital with an asthma attack. And so we really know where the problem is, and we know what's causing it. We're just not doing anything about it, and shame on us. Everybody in this country should have good health regardless of what their zip code is. And when I don't want to pick on a former mayor of New York City, but John Lindsay, who was mayor back when I first got to New York in the late 60s, John Lindsay said, and everybody loved the statement, I wouldn't breathe any air I couldn't see. Now that's a cute thing, but it doesn't keep your health good, and it's unfortunately just too cute by half, we would say. Across America, there are communities, both urban and rural, that have suffered for generations from the toxic air and poisonous water and fossil fuel economy produced for so long while Washington looked the other way. And as president, I promised I would put all of the hardest hit communities at the top of our priority list, including those that have provided us with coal for generations. The coal miners are ones that suffer more than anybody else. Their health is not great, so when we say we're going to move them to areas where there are jobs, a lot of them can't do that. And we've got to understand, and our foundations tried to work to help train Americans for new jobs across the country. Unfortunately, one of the things that the Trump first budget did is it cut back training for a lot of these, retraining for a lot of these programs. We have to do something, and today communities face the challenge of diversifying their economies and making the transition to a 21st century low-carbon economy. It isn't easy, far from it, but in the weeks ahead, I'll be speaking with mayors and local leaders in these regions, learning from their experiences, asking for their ideas, adding the experiences that we had in New York City and retraining people that came to the country and didn't have great command of the English language, didn't have the skills that our economy needs, and so we know how to do it. It's much more difficult in some areas of the country than in others, so we've got to pull together and figure out ways to do it. It is outrageous that the coal companies aren't helping. They just do use that bankruptcy out that I talked about. But if we hold everybody accountable, including us, we can make some progress. The issues I've outlined today are only the beginning of our climate change agenda, which will also be part of our overall agenda on jobs and other health issues. I will be rolling that out over the next few weeks, and more than plans, what I'm going to try to show that I can do it, is offer the leadership to get everybody to pull together and to really make progress rather than just complain. And that's what leadership is all about. In New York, not me, but the team that I put together had a record for 12 years of building coalitions and turning plans into reality. That team has never been afraid of the toughest battles against President Trump now and the biggest special interests, whether it is coal industry, gun lobby, or big tobacco. In all of those cases, during our administration in the city and then after we left City Hall, we've taken on all these issues, and so far we've won. We do know how to fight Donald Trump. We beat him a number of times. We took on Donald Trump after he said he'd pull us out of the Climate Paris Agreement. And we formed a group joint with Jerry Brown, governor of California, who I was with in San Francisco a couple days ago, to announce that we've made something called America's Pledge, saying we are going to step in and replace the federal government, believe it or not. And we've actually done that, and I was in Madrid 3 days ago to give our report to the United Nations, which is what the Paris Agreement required us to do, to show that we really are making progress. And there's companies and state governments and city governments and nonprofits, all of whom gotten together and really made a big difference. So we have a lot of more work to do. I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and get working. I know you are too, and I think we should find a ways to defeat Donald Trump, who tries to keep dragging us backwards. This is not a game. This is not something we should be playing politics with. This is people's lives.